Ladies and gentlemen, it's Saturday, it's Scotland, it's 1 p.m, and we're back in original form, the legible, credible, inevitable storm, which is A Force for Good, and our Saturday street stall, coming to you live from our nerve centre here in the great British city of Glasgow. With me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. A good day to you all watching on Facebook and watching on Twitter. And we are so glad for the people who are coming in on these platforms and who are supporting us and our mission here at A Force for Good, which is the place where we've got it all figured out. And there ain't no worries that we're worried about. But of course, we have concerns. We have political concerns about the state of the nation. And these are things that we're going to talk about today. Now, this is our 14th Saturday street stall. 2 of those were outside special assignments, which got huge traction on social media. Good to see Carl watching. Good to see Donnie watching. Give you a wave back. Craig's watching. Jack's watching. Fantastic to hear from you, Jack. Rose has joined on Twitter. All right, Jack. Hi from a Scot from Milton Keynes. Good, good. The Milton Keynes Bowl. I always remember that. That was where Status Quo played their final concert with the Fab Five lineup. That's what I always think about when I think about Milton Keynes for some reason. Have you been at that? Were you at that concert, Jack? Yeah, so this is our 14th, our special assignment on Statue Sunday, which will go down in history, which was the 14th of June. That was when Glasgow rose up in their hundreds to defend George Square from a tiny bunch of malcontents who were going to vandalise the statues. Well, they got sent packing and sent homeward to think again. And that broadcast from Statue Sunday was viewed over 500,000 times. And it reached over 1 million people. So our regular Saturday work is really doing the business. Audrey, good to see you watching. Hope things are well down there in the south. Derek, have a great day. Hope all goes well. All is well. All is well at A Force for Good. And it's getting to that time where we're going to be starting thinking shortly about having street stalls, because things are beginning to open up. But opening up in a very strange and often disturbing way. Because I want to talk for a few minutes about what I'm calling Covid Conformism. And it's got an undercurrent which is actually quite disturbing in many ways. Now, I was in the supermarket 2 days ago, and in the massive big supermarket there would have been at least 100 people. There was only one person wearing a mask, okay, who looked like a kind of frightened youth. I don't know what he was scared of, but obviously some kind of something in the atmosphere. One person. And from all the statistics that we're seeing as well, the danger, if there ever was a danger, is basically going away. But at this time we are now being told that we've all got to wear masks from the 10th of this month, next week. Which seems doing things backwards if there even is a case for mask wearing. And of course, many of us from a small C conservative mentality, we don't like the idea of being told to conform to a certain way of behaving by certainly political people that we disagree with. So it's very annoying that we're being told to do this. And you know, I saw a joke on the internet the other day which sums it all up. A woman goes into the doctors and goes, Doctor, when do you think this COVID-19 is going to go away? And the doctor responded, I don't really know, because I don't take an interest in politics. And that's essentially what it's come down to now. COVID is all about politics. Initially, it was about flattening the curve so that we didn't overwhelm the NHS. But now it's all about politics and who can get us out of this with the maximum political point scoring. And of course, here in Scotland, the Scottish National Party is absolutely loving the COVID thing, because what it has allowed them to do is to grandstand every single day on the television. Nicola Sturgeon comes out like the oracle, Mother Sturgeon, to whom we must all genuflect and wait upon the words of wisdom that are going to come out of her mouth, and then all take them on board and basically submit to her. And she's loving this. She's loving this. She's never had so much publicity in her life, where she can stand up in front of the United Kingdom and the world to an extent, and, as somebody has just said there, create difference with England, and ensure that she makes that difference, and she trains people's minds to think of Scotland being different, and she trains people's minds to look up to her as the font of wisdom and the great leader. And so she's happy to continue to do this for as long as she can possibly get away with it. And it looks like she's going to keep getting away with this. She's going to keep getting away with this because we here don't really have any opposition MPs who are just changing the frame. Instead, they're allowing themselves to be led by her and responding to her. Give you an example, the mask wearing thing. Where are the Tory or Labour people who are standing up and going, no, you shouldn't have to wear a mask? We are standing for the principles of freedom of choice. We're standing for the principles that you can't make people conform to wear a certain thing, the health benefits of which are also very questionable. So we need people just in Hollywood standing up and saying those things, changing the frame, not going along with it. And there's a feeling that we've all just been chucked under the bus by the people who are meant to do the opposition. And that's what's disturbing at the moment, is that she's, I mean, okay, right now she's saying you must wear a mask from next Thursday. What if she says you must wear your pants on top of your trousers from next Friday? Are people going to disagree? You know, if somebody comes out from the Imperial College London and goes, well, we've done the research that if you wear your underpants on top of your trousers, it actually stops COVID-19. In this present environment, do you think anybody is going to challenge her? And she'll be standing up there going, yes, people will have to wear their pants on top of their trousers from next Friday. And if you disagree, you're like far right or something like that. And what's she going to say next? Actually, that joke is from a Woody Allen film, by the way, called Bananas, where the mad dictator of St. Marcos comes out with a whole load of crazy things that the people have to do, and which the people start doing. And you can watch that to get an idea of just where we are right at the moment with this whole COVID thing. So we need politicians to stand up and say, it's ridiculous, I'm not going to wear a mask in Asda. I was in Asda last night, nobody's wearing a mask except one frightened, gentle-looking youth. Okay? So it's time just to get rid of all of this nonsense, but who's going to do it? I mean, you can listen, we can talk to the cows come home about that, but we need politicians to, what I call, change the frame in Hollywood and say, no, rubbish, we're not doing it. And then when a politician does that, the media love that, actually, because then they can start to say, well, what's the debate? Is it good or bad to wear a mask? And then half the country comes out and goes, no, it's obviously not, according to the science here. And there's a sense that we're all free again. Whereas this is just absolutely, it's bad. And I tell you who else we feel very sorry for. It's little children just going to school. Little children being told that the world out there is full of these invisible germs, and you all have to sit in your little pod and you can't play with your children or anything like that. It's almost like child cruelty, because they're training little children to be afraid and to be scared of life. And you know, it's really evil, to be frank with you, what's going on at the moment. Diane is watching. Give you back a wave. Bill says, I'm not worried about wearing a mask because I've got a cracking Union Jack one. Well, that's what you want to do if you have to wear a mask. Get it, emblazoned with something that you like to wear, like a Union Jack mask or a Union Jack flag or a scarf, like a football scarf just wrapped around you or something like that, rather than looking like you've just come out of a zombie film. So wanted opposition to the SNP at this time. Gordon is watching, give you back a wave there. And to the extent, I know politicians, it's difficult if you're a politician, but the way you oppose is to change the frame. You don't accept the premises that your opposition is building its argument upon. You change the premises and you change the assumptions. But if you accept the opposition's premises and you accept the opposition's assumptions, then your scope for movement and your scope for opposition will be very limited. Okay, very limited. These are basic political facts that we're talking about here. Dropping knowledge on basic political things that many politicians don't know yet. So if we can help them, that's all good. Fight them on completely different ground and stop agreeing with the Scottish nationalists, because the Scottish nationalists are instilling a pervasive environment of fear in this country, and they're micromanaging the population and they're enforcing conformity, and all of these things are not a position which can be supported from a traditional small c conservative position, or even just a basic freedom of the individual position. Creating an environment of fear, micromanaging the population, and enforcing conformity. Now, some people love that. Some people love that. Like the Scottish nationalists love the idea that we're all going to obey Mother Sturgeon, and we're all Scots together wearing masks, being frightened and conforming. They've got a mentality that likes that. But there's many of us who don't like that mentality, and we don't approve of it, and we want somebody out there, politician in Holyrood, just to say no more. And I'll tell you something else that's been a real issue here, is because of this perceived lack of opposition, there's a growing number of people now who are saying, let's just abolish Holyrood. Of course, it's a minority who are saying that, but there's definitely a strand of unionist thought which is coming out and saying, this is just hopeless. We have to get rid of Holyrood. And that's actually becoming an issue now. When Holyrood was established, there was lots of people back in 1999 who didn't want it in the first place. But it's taken, 21 years or thereabouts for people to begin to say, we still don't like it, and maybe now's the time to start arguing for its abolition. Now, of course, that's not something that will happen overnight, but imagine if there was politicians who are actually in Holyrood arguing for its abolition. That would be very interesting. It would be a bit like the Brexit people who are in the European Union Parliament. But that's something just to throw out there for the moment. Something to throw out there for the moment. Because there's definitely people who are just saying that. Derek says, agree to all you say. The big question is, how can we change this grandstanding from the Nats? Well, it doesn't take much. It only takes a few outspoken politicians to do so, because reality is created, as we've said in the past, by the words that come out of politicians' mouths. That's how political reality is created. And unless you hear these words coming out of politicians' mouths, then you get stuck in the old version of reality, which is running its course. It's running its course. The old version of reality is telling us to wear masks in shops when nobody's really in any number been wearing masks up to now. So the old reality is like almost eating itself. David's watching. Gillian saying it's not healthy to wear masks. I agree with you on that. Alex said, I'm of the opinion that Holyrood should be abolished. How many tiers of government do we need? Exactly. As we always say, everything that is around us here in Scotland, all the built heritage, basically all the motorways, all the bridges except one, everything was built prior to devolution. You didn't need 129 MSPs to get in the way. You needed one Scottish secretary who said, we're going to build an airport, we're going to build a motorway, we're going to build this, that, and the next thing. And it got done. Bang, it got done. And it got done faster than it's ever getting done these days, because now it has to go through all these different levels. I mean, so that's definitely an argument. It just slows things up. Somebody saying there they work in the kitchen in the care home and it's unbearable with a mask on. I can understand that. Somebody said Sturgeon's speeches are painful agitprop, daily agitprop against the union. That's so true. She's loving that, of course. She's got that fantastic stand that essentially Boris Johnson gave her, to stand up there and pronounce merrily from on high to us minions. Graham's watching. Good to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. Morwina, you're always on every week. Good to see you again. Good shout out to Morwina from down south. Graham says, if COVID hasn't taught us the dangers of devolution, the UK will soon be no more. Do you know what? You're absolutely on the button there. Things are serious. This COVID thing has really ramped up the extent to which the devolved areas are able to posture against the centre and are able to build up the impression that the United Kingdom is not one nation, it's separate squabbling nations. And in that regard, one of our supporters sent a really good letter to, I think it was the STV yesterday, and the person says, and I'll just read it out, I have been watching the 6:30 news on ITV and was disappointed to hear, not for the first time, the newsreader refer to the four nations of the UK. This expression was never used before devolution and plays straight into the hands of the likes of the SNP, who devote their lives to creating a sense of difference and division between us all. And the use of this phrase, the four nations of the UK, certainly helps them to do that. If we believe in the union, could you not say instead the devolved regions, or the devolved parts, or perhaps name them as in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland? This may not seem much to you, but an accumulation of small things will go to create the bigger picture, which currently is not favouring unionism. And that's so true, and that was well said, and that was sent to complaints@itv.com. And as we've always said, we can certainly understand the United Kingdom as a union of nations, but it is far better, far stronger. A far stronger frame is to understand it as a nation of unions. A nation of unions which have built up through time, from the original social and cultural unions of us coming together, to the regal union of 1603, to the parliamentary union of 1707, to the family unions, quite literally, throughout the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. So the United Kingdom is a nation of unions, far more than it's a union of nations. It's a nation of families, quite literally, far more than it is a family of nations. And that's the way of framing it that brings in the passion, that brings in the heart, that brings in the emotion, rather than just the sheer technocratic elements of the economy and the constitution as such. Alistair, on you go. Give the doubters both barrels. Thank you, James. Always will do that. Graham says, totally agree. The media phrase, the four nations, is a nationalist term. ITV just said it again. Yeah, it seems that they're going into that whole four nations thing, and thereby training people's minds to think of the United Kingdom as just separate parts. That's never really had any unity. Boris and the UK government are referring to it more as the devolved regions. Well, that's good to hear. And the devolved administrations, that's really important to hear if they're picking up on this as well, because they are the ones who we're relying upon to get this vocabulary right. because reality is created by words. And if you've got your words a certain way, you'll create a certain reality. If you've got your words the other way, you'll create another reality. An actual reality comes from your mouth. So that's an important point. And another one related to that, of course, as well, which is an exact consequence of the devolution of the COVID response, is the idea of there being a significant geographical border between the United Kingdom, between its parts, that there's a border between Scotland and England. There's no geographical physical border. There's no boundaries there. There are, of course, legal borders on paper, but that's a different thing from the idea of there being a geographical border. There's no geographical border, which is, I think, what Boris Johnson was trying to say in Parliament last week when he said that. Well done for all the truth you put out. We love Scotland and our union. Thank you. Cheryl, thanks for that comment. Morwina says, yes, just love it. Good. Great to see support from all you guys out there on Facebook and also on Twitter. Yeah, so this idea of there being a border, that's something else as well, which has just come into play, and we're going to be hearing a lot more of it. And so we need groups like ourselves to be supported if you can. Richard saying, before devolution there was an understanding that Scotland, England and Wales were in some sense nations, but they were subsumed into the one nation of Britain, or if you want to call it the United Kingdom. That's right. That's absolutely right. Look, if you want to give us some support, you can get our new wee badge, which is our flag badge here, which is an exact copy of that badge, that behind me. And also the t-shirt here, which is a force for good. If you're watching on Facebook, the letters will be reversed. If you're watching on Twitter, it should be the correct way around. That's just the way that it works. If you want this t-shirt, by the way, go to teespring.com. That's Teespring, Teespring, Tee spring, all one word, .com. Click on apparel and search for A Force for Good, and you'll find our shop there. We've got this, we've got Scottish and British, English and British, Welsh and British, British Ulster. We've got these in hoodies, and we've got a lot of other merchandise out there as well on our teespring.com shop. And if I can just ask one of the folk there behind it to hit that, put that link into the comments, so that we can see that. Tina is watching and Barry's watching. Good to hear from you, Barry. There you go. Our full store is at teespring.com/etc. there. I love that. Thanks very much for putting that in. Yeah, so we are trying to promote our particular rhetoric and our particular understanding of the union, which has been developing since we got established in 21st of March 2012. So we've been going at this for 8 years, and I'm very pleased today to announce the completion of a book that we have done. Now, this is a book which is 56 pages. It's A6 size, which is to say it is can fit in your back pocket. It's going to be perfect bound, and it's full colour. And it's going to be called A Wee Book for the Union. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. A Wee Book for the Union. This is now complete. It's all put together, and we just need a little bit of extra help in order to get enough money to do the first print run. So I'm going to describe what this book is about. It's 56 pages, which is a good wee size. Half of it's pictures, fantastic pictures that we've taken at A Force for Good, as well as other pictures which are copyright free. And it's divided into 4 parts. The first part is the past, how we came together. Andrew's watching. Robert Cairns is watching. Good to see you, Robert. Hope things are well. First part, the past, how we came together. The second part, the present, benefits of the UK today. Part 3, the debate, exposing the indie myths. And part 4, the future, making a better Britain. And that's 4 parts. And the first part, the past, talks about ancient roots of union. So we get our 5,000-year-old union idea in there. Talks about the union of the crowns. Talks about how the Union Jack came together. Talks about the Covenanters and the Glorious Revolution. Talks about the Union of 1707. Talks about the Empire and the Commonwealth. And talks about the NHS, the welfare state, and the post-war consensus. How we came together through these major events in our history from a Scottish looking out perspective. The present, the benefits of the UK today, talk about a stronger economy, Scotland's leading role in union, our social union and our shared British identity, great British institutions and Britain's global influence today. Part 3, the debate exposing the indie myths. That talks about why Britain is a nation. That's so hugely important to our worldview. Why the British Parliament represents us all. Why Scotland is not more progressive than England. Talks about oil and related fantasy figures around oil. And why Scotland can't be independent in the EU. And the future, about making a better Britain, talks about our journey towards a more perfect union. Because as we always say, there's never been a time in the past when everything's been perfect. It's a journey. It's a journey. It talks about 23 policies to strengthen the union. So it's a great wee book to send to your MP and say, what about some of these great ideas? And it concludes, united we stand, divided we fall. There's a page of references and photo credits. There's a page of how to contact us and how to donate to us. And it's all going to be beautifully bound perfectly in our trademark red throughout. So it's a really powerful little thing, which will be a good campaigning and educational tool. But here's the thing, we need some help for that. So if you can go to forceforgood.uk/donate to and just chip in something there, because we can't yet send it to the printers, but we just need a few quid to do that. The total cost is going to be 350 quid for the first print run. So anything that you can chip in, if I can get somebody please just to push that that link into the comments there, as well as the link to the PayPal button at forceforgood.uk. Thanks very much. So that's something that we're really, really excited about, and it's been a long time coming, but it's here at last, as they say, and it's going to be an effective little campaigning tool, and we'll be giving it out for a wee donation on our street stalls, and we'll be giving the first print run to, it's free, it will be free to anybody who donates over 50 quid, and we will also be selling it on our shop when it comes out, and we'll be asking for feedback on it so that you can say what you think was missing or what could be improved or whatever. So it's a work in progress, but the very first edition is a cracker. There, thank you very much. forceforgood.uk/donate to, and the PayPal link is also in there. So we don't need much for the first print run, but we do need something if you can help us for that. A fantastic little work. A wee book for the Union. So we'll be on the street stall. Would you like to see a wee book? We've got a wee book for the Union. Would you like to see it? Have you seen a wee book? So it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Can't wait until we've got the funds to just run that off. And once we've got the funds, we'll run it off. We'll have it within a week. So do what you can there, folks, to make sure that becomes a reality. Thank you. So that's the wee book. That's the wee book, which is very, 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 very exciting. And it's full of our rhetorical flourishes and full of phrases that you can use down the pub or with your friend or whenever you're talking about this. and it's also full of ideas that people don't normally think about, as well as great little pictures with the historical elements explained. And many people know we're really bang on as far as our history is concerned, and as far as finding things that relate to our British history from a Scottish looking out perspective, because that's how we're framing it. You know, we see the Union as building up through time, coming out from all parts of the United Kingdom. You know, we're not saying that. We're not looking at it from just like, say, an English perspective. We're looking at it from the Scottish perspective. How did the Union build out from Scotland? How did it build out from Northern Ireland? How did it build out from Wales? How did it build out from England, obviously, as well? So we've got a very interesting spin on that, which can be developed as the weeks and months and years go by. And I think we've done a really good job with our first edition as well. And I want to say a big thank you to the people who helped us with that, and to our graphic designer, who is A1. We have a fantastic graphic designer. May, good to see you. I'll give you a wave back. James, don't think James is a fan. Okay, James, no problemo. You can't please everybody all the time, but you can please most of the people most of the time. Is that the phrase? If not, I've just made it up. So what else were we going to be talking about today? Do you know what? I'm going to we're building our communication platforms, this being an excellent one. Robert says the Scottish nationalists hate facts and truths. Truth to them is hate speech. There's absolute an amount of wisdom in that, Robert, I would say, and that's reminded us of the so-called hate speech law, which Humza Yousaf, the so-called Justice Secretary, is trying to push through. Now, he's doing a public consultation on this, which lasts to the end of July. We're going to get in our points of view on that, but we must not. This hate speech law that he is trying to put in is entirely to stop any discussion whatsoever that his side does not like, even just mild criticism. It's a very scary bill, and we will be publicising it. But this is the difference between them and us, you see. And I use our side very liberally here. We tend to politically just be happy with people saying anything that they want, and they have to take the consequences for that. But the people like Humza Yousaf and his side, they want, again, it goes back to what I was saying at the start of this video, is they want everybody to conform, not just with mask wearing, but with thoughts in their head as well. And they wake up in the morning and they think, isn't it terrible that somebody disagrees with me? How can I stop them from disagreeing with me? I know, I'll write a law about it. And for people like ourselves, that would never cross our minds. But there is a certain kind of person who will try to enforce conformity, not just of mask wearing and dress, but also of speech and thought. And they do it, you know. And all of these speech laws just have to go. They have to go. At the moment, the political establishment accepts them all, but they have to go. There has to come a time when they just all put off the book on whatever level and just get back to the way it was in the past, what people said, what they liked, and if you didn't like it, that was just too bad. And people would say what you didn't like back, and you just had to like it and lump it. But this, the speech laws, they just all have to go. They all have to go. Is there a political party out there that will just cut them off the book entirely? Because that's what has to happen with all the so-called speech and hate crime laws. Unless you're inciting to a crime, because that is a crime. You cannot tell somebody to do a crime, because that's a crime to do that. That's wrong. So that sort of incitement to crime is wrong. and always has been recognised as wrong within Western thought. But inciting people to an emotion, or inciting people with words that are not a crime, that's all just, that shouldn't be anywhere near a statute book. And people who put it on a statute book are deliberately trying to socially engineer the country down certain ways. And Humza Yousaf's new speech laws are deliberately incited to stop people like myself and people who support us from having a voice, or for even disagreeing with the SNP. You don't think that's possible? I can see a time. Imagine if they got their independence. Do you think they would allow people like me and everybody who agrees with us just to keep talking? Of course not. They would be feeling their oats. They would be like, right, time to shut down him, her, that group, all of these groups. We would be in a serious situation if they ever got their independence, which they never will. But if they did, make no mistake, they're coming after everybody who is not a Scottish nationalist. They're coming after your voice and your mind. And this speech, this hate crime law that Humza Yousaf is trying to bring in is part of that. And how ironic that he should be bringing it in. Did any of you see his speech last week in the Scottish Parliament, where he was spitting out the word white, complaining about all the white people who were in positions of authority in Scotland? The Lord Advocate is white. Well, of course. I don't know if it's a he or she these days, but of course they're likely to be white, because you get Lord Advocate when you get to the end of your career, which is like maybe after 40 years or longer. And so there's no ethnic minorities who arrived yesterday who are going to be Lord Advocate. Like, you don't take a Somali refugee and say, we've got jobs here for you, you can work in Asda, or Lord Advocates go in, would you like to be Lord Advocate? We'll send you along for an interview for Lord Advocate. And the Somali guy goes along for his interview, and they're like, how much experience do you have? And the guy goes, well, I only arrived in the country yesterday. And they say, sorry. You know, that's not prejudice that you didn't give that guy the job. Okay, maybe in 50 years he might be qualified enough to be Lord Advocate. But the reason why all of these big positions in Scotland are filled by elderly white people is because that's what the job you get at the end of 40 or 50 years if you've done extremely well. But he was spitting out this white. Oh, he was just hating on the whites. And this is the man who's so-called against racism. Goodness me, it was a sight to see, and it really damaged him, by the way. It really damaged him, because he thought he could get away with that, but he couldn't get away with it. Humza Yousaf stated he was muting people on Twitter who didn't agree with him. That's correct, he was doing that. How is he allowed to give that speech is beyond me. I'll tell you why, Lynn. It's because nobody in Holyrood had the guts to say, hey, wait a minute, Humza, you're talking pants. How can you talk like that about white people? Nobody did that. They all sat there either because they agreed with him, which is a disgrace, and I think that would be 95% of people who agreed with him that it was a terrible disgrace that there was white people in all these big jobs, and also because the very few percent of people who were there who disagreed with him were too afraid to disagree with him. Again, that's one of the things that's making people say, we have to just get rid of this Holyrood. It's just rubbish. It's rubbish. Another thing I don't like about Holyrood, and I like about Westminster, is if somebody says something rubbish from the other side, at Westminster you can go, rubbish, or shout at them or whatever. In Holyrood, you've all got to sit there like frightened little children until this guy has said his piece, which is pants, and then you stand up and you say a piece. It's all just like so, it's just so, what's the word? There's no energy there in Holyrood, whereas in Westminster, it's like shouting and angry and emotional, whereas Holyrood is just so bland. Bland with bland people in it. Karen's watching. Good to see you, Karen. Bill saying, well, Scotland's white majority, so of course most white people are in these positions. Exactly. Richard Tallis says conformist. Conformist is definitely the phrase. Yeah, modern Scotland is like just conformist. It's conformist. So what I want to talk about now is, good things just coming up from what I just said there. This this week in British history, a lot of things that play into what I've just said as well, which I'll get to. But today, of course, is American Separation Day, 4th of July, in remembrance of the day on the 4th of July, 1776, when the 13 colonies separated from Great Britain and from the British Empire and from George III. So the Americans celebrate it. They call it American Independence Day. I tend to look on it as American Separation Day. Linda's saying, nobody stands up for us at Holyrood. A bunch of idiots sick of putting up with Nats getting... They want... Yeah. Richard's saying their homogenous vanilla political correctness is what you get in Holyrood. And that's so true. Yeah, so today, American Separation Day. And the Americans, to the extent that they're allowed to these days, do celebrate it as Independence Day. And that's great because it's their nation and so on. And we're all for that. But from our perspective as British loyalists, we can see that the American so-called revolution was vastly overplayed with a lot of propaganda which was not actually correct, a lot of anti-British propaganda. And you take people like George Washington. George Washington, who's seen as the founding father, he used to be a British redcoat. Okay, used to fight for the British redcoats. Okay, but he got a bit of wealth, and following the Indian Wars, which the British had won, he could see that him and his mates were a bit vulnerable to a growing underclass of Americans who were kind of unhappy with him and so on. So he kind of made a wee swerve, and he basically blamed it all on the British, who, quite frankly, it was wrong. It was wrong. And overnight, the British were denounced as an army of occupation when they had never really been considered that before. But again, reality is created by the words that come out of politicians' mouths. So they said that the British were an army of occupation when a few years earlier, George Washington had fought with the British as a British redcoat. And so, as a friend said to us a couple of years ago, the British went from hero to zero within a year. And the increased taxation idea was just the elaborate lie to galvanise the people with their patriotic rhetoric. And at the time, the British Empire loyalists, they outnumbered the American rebels, but they were terrorised. Many of them were Scottish. Many of the Empire loyalists were Scottish and Scots-Irish. And they were also called Tories as well, which was interesting. That was a form of abuse even back then. Mike, good to see you. And it's where tarring and feathering came in, and the British loyalists were the victims of those sorts of things. And the rebels were essentially kind of terrorists, basically. And the British had to show restraint when they were fighting them, lest that they risk pushing them into supporting the rebellion. But as we know, all that ended with the Americans eventually leaving. But what also happened is a lot of the British Empire loyalists moved to Canada. And that's why Canada today has still got the Queen as the head of state. It's because of the influx from the British who lost at the time of the American Revolution. What they're called today is United Empire Loyalists. And they created they set the tone essentially for British Canada. They set the tone for British Canada, which to an extent still exists today with the Queen as head of state and so on. Although Canada's got its own problems these days, which we don't need to get into. Tomorrow, 5th of July, 1853, a Great Britain was born in 1853, and his name was Cecil Rhodes, one of the most extraordinary human beings who ever existed. And of course, as we know today, certain people use him as a whipping boy, as a hate figure in their ongoing attempt at what they refer to as the decolonisation of education, because Cecil Rhodes was such a massive figure in the development of the British Empire that if they can bring him down, they can put a bad smell over everything else in the British Empire. But be that as it may, Rhodes was definitely a man of his time, and he had vast ambition and vast vision. And he wrote his first will when he was aged 24. And in his first will, aged 24, he said that he wanted his wealth that he had still to accumulate to be left for the establishment, promotion and development of a secret society, the true aim and object whereof shall be for the extension of British rule throughout the world, the perfecting of a system of emigration from the United Kingdom and of colonisation by British subjects of all lands where the means of livelihood are attainable by energy, labour and enterprise, and especially the occupation by British settlers of the entire continent of Africa, the Holy Land, the valley of the Euphrates, the islands of Cyprus and Candia, the whole of South America, the islands of the Pacific, not heretofore possessed by Great Britain, the whole of the Malay archipelago, the seaboard of China and Japan, I like this bit, the ultimate recovery of the United States of America as an integral part of the British Empire. And so he had a vast vision there. He didn't accomplish all of that, but he certainly went some way to accomplishing quite a bit of it. And indeed, the country Rhodesia was ultimately named after Cecil Rhodes. So, and he only lived to 48. So in the 24 years after he wrote that will, he had done an awful lot of doing that, and he had set up the Rhodes Scholarship as well, which certainly helped people go through university, but whether or not they did it with the express aim of ultimately recovering the United States of America as an integral part of the British Empire, I don't know, I doubt. But nevertheless, an amazing man, and we stand by him, we love him, you know, of course we do. We love these guys, and we're not going to hear to anybody going, but he was a racist. He colonised Africa. Who cares, mate? Who cares? He did his bit at the time, which he thought was the right thing to do. David's got a story there about working on the aircraft carriers. Yeah, I know what you're saying, David. So some people attack Cecil Rhodes, just like they attack everybody else who's got a statue, because they want to dump on our British history in order to create a new revolutionary world order, essentially. And, well, they're not going to get away with it. They're not going to get away with it. Also on this day, 3 years ago, Her Majesty the Queen opened the Queen Elizabeth Canal in Falkirk, and we were there, and we took the quintessential iconic picture, which we have been using a lot ever since, of the Union Jacks at the Kelpies. And some of our supporters who are watching today will be able to see themselves in that lineup of people. And we've also got that in a little card that we use. We're not actually marketing this yet. We just use it as a courtesy card, as a complimentary card to send out. That's a lovely watercolour that was done by one of our supporters, and of that iconic moment, which was 3 years ago on the 5th of July. On the 6th of July last year, the Scottish Nationalists held their march in Ayr, and they claimed to have got 13,000 people at it, but we as normally counted it, and they had 2,672, so they were lying again. But that was a good counter demo that we did. It was also the day when we launched our poem, In Days of Yore, from Scotland's shore, James the Sixth, our dauntless hero, came and created first the Union flag on Britain's fair domain. Here may it wave, our boast, our pride, and joined in love together, the thistle, shamrock, rose and twine, the Union Jack forever. And there's 13 verses of that, which we adapted from Alexander Muir's Canadian poem, The Maple Leaf Forever. Alexander Muir was one of these United Loyalists that we're talking about, and he was from Lesmahago, but his family immigrated over there. Now here's an interesting thing. On the 6th of July, the first non-white MP was elected to Westminster. Now, when do you think that was, the first non-white MP to Westminster? Would that be 1980? Nope. Would that be 1970? Nope. And would that be 1950? Nope. Would that be 1940? Nope. Would that be 1928 when women in the UK got the vote? Nope, it was before then. Would that be 1918 when working class men in Britain got the vote? No, it was before then. Would that be 1900? No, it was before then. In 1892, the first non-white was elected to the British Parliament, and he was an Indian Parsi, and his name was Dababi Neoraji. An Indian Parsi, won the central Finsbury seat for the Liberal Party in 1892. So how dare people try to say that the United Kingdom is somehow institutionally racist? How dare they say things like that when the first non-white MP was elected in the 19th century? In fact, it actually goes back before then, because 51 years previously, back in 1841, in July 1841, 51 years earlier, there was an Anglo-Indian elected, but he was removed as a consequence of allegations of bribery and corruption in his election process. But so he was really the first one in 1841, although he may have got that a little bit naughtily. But the first one that goes down in history is 1892. The first non-white MP at Westminster. So Westminster and Boris Johnson, people, I've got nothing to apologise for. Somebody goes, oh, Parliament's racist. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's self-evidently not. There's no reason to go on the back foot. You go on the attack, and you point out things like I've just pointed out. For example, Rockall, 8th of July 1810, the earliest recorded landing by Basil Hall from HMS Endymion. So that Rockall is British, as we always say. Andrew Tate is watching. Good. And on the 9th of July 1937, George VI and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, visited Glasgow and unveiled a monument which is at the top of Bellahouston Park, and they were to return also in 1938 when they opened the Empire exhibition also at Bellahouston Park. And on the 10th of July, the first ever Queen of England and Ireland together happened. On the 10th of July 1553, the Protestant martyr Jane became the first ever Queen of England and Ireland together. As many of you know, Lady Jane Grey did not last for very long. She lasted for 9 days when Mary, the eldest surviving son of Henry VIII, basically got her head chopped off. So that's Lady Jane Grey, who's considered a Protestant martyr, but is also considered as a queen in the official royal family's line of queens. Lady Jane Grey gets her 9 days in there. Some people have tried to say that she was somehow illegitimate, but the British royal family accepts Lady Jane Grey as one of the queens in their line. And she is buried in the Tower of London at the chapel there. And then we know of 2 films of Lady Jane Grey, 9 Days a Queen, which is from 1936, also known as Tudor Rose, and the 1986 film Lady Jane. And there's a tragic portrait of her at the chopping block with her ladies in waiting in a distressed manner. A very powerful picture which has immortalised her in memory forever. Ladies and gentlemen, always give this wee badge a mention, which is there. You can go to aforceforgood.uk, go along the top, it says shop, and you can get that. It's a bestseller, and it's a really attractive little badge. It's got the Union Jack in it, and it says a force for good right through the middle of it, so that's selling well. And we've also got our new Union Heart badge as well, which is slightly bigger than the old Union Heart badge that we had. You can get that at our shop on our website, aforceforgood.uk. And I was just looking at the national newspaper just there before I came in, and they've got, I speak about this every week, but about 2 weeks ago I talked about the Scottish Independence Foundation and how they've raised 165,000. Well, in yesterday's National it tells us they've now raised £190,000 for 142 projects, one of which is a television or internet television channel that it gets a whole write-up here. And apparently they've got a show, the Nats have got a show, a daily news broadcast produced in Scotland, about Scotland, by Scots, for a Scottish audience. So that's what they're raising money for, and their target is 40 full-time staff. And that seems quite ambitious, but you know what? They could make it. So if you can help us in any way, please do so. Got the links in there. A Force for Good. Our full store is at teespring.com. If you want these snappy things, we've also got others, which is like a half saltire, half Union Jack, or a half St George's, half Union Jack, or a half Red Hand of Ulster, or a half Welsh Dragon. And it says, you know, Welsh and British, British Ulster, English and British, Scottish and British. They're our best sellers, and we've got that in hoodie form as well as a range of absolutely other cracking designs. And that's at teespring.com. And there's somebody who's put in the direct link to the Union Heart badge, and we'll be putting the direct links into this video as well. So thank you for coming on, folks. It's been another great day, a great day of talking, a great day of pushing the truth, the British Unionist truth. Look out, as I say, for our wee book for the Union. If we can get the money for that as soon as possible, then we will be able just to tell the printers just to get cracking on it, and hopefully we may even have it for next week if enough of you can please donate and to please help us get that print run done. We need around about 350 quid for the first print run. Folks, thank you very much for watching. My name is Alistair McConnachie. I want to say God bless the United Kingdom and God save the Queen. Take care.